I'm Plami, and in this episode of Plami's Thoughts On, I'm gonna be sharing my thoughts to the first episode of the 11th and final season of one of my favorite shows ever, The Walking Dead. And yeah, I have a lot to say about this episode, honestly, which is kind of surprising because it's the first part of a two-parter, the first ever two-parter we've ever gotten on The Walking Dead, which is both surprising and not surprising. It's surprising because you would think that we would have gotten at least one at this point, because every show has at least one two-parter, at least I feel like. But also not really surprising because The Walking Dead, and by extension Fear the Walking Dead and World Beyond, are not really the kind of shows that need two-parters. Because by its nature, the Walking Dead universe is a kind of universe which tells interconnected stories. Like, it's ultimately one story of survival in the zombie apocalypse. There's certainly spaces where you could do two-parters, but for the most part, considering that every single episode is just flowing from the previous one and into the next one, it doesn't really feel necessary. So I feel like because of what we've seen in the first episode so far, it kind of feels like they're ultimately doing this two-parter thing, honestly, just for the novelty of it, because there's very little in the episode itself to justify it being a specific two-parter, because ultimately you can pick certain episodes in the show's run that kind of feel like they were connected and they were telling one story. Like, for example, you can say that the two Governor episodes in season 4 were a Governor two-parter. You could certainly argue that, but it wasn't called as a two-parter, I guess. And considering that in this episode the formula of the A plot and the B plot and how it alternates between the two is just like for any other Walking Dead episode, there's very little to justify this being a two-parter. Ultimately, we'll have to wait to see the non-two-parter episodes until we are actually able to judge whether this episode makes sense for being a two-parter, because maybe this two-parter is just gonna deal with Maggie and Negan finally kind of settling their relationship, because so far since she came back it's just been a back and forth kind of thing, and I think both of them want to finally finish off their constant bickering and constant back and forth. And maybe after these two-parter they're actually gonna have a settled relationship, whether it's hate or reluctant working together, I don't know, but maybe they're gonna be finally settled, and that is going to ultimately justify this being a two-parter. But then you still have the Commonwealth stuff in this episode to kinda confuse people about why is this a two-parter? Why would you include this if this is a specific two-parter about Negan and Maggie's relationship finally getting settled? So yeah, I don't know. That just bothers me a little bit. Because otherwise, it's honestly a pretty good episode, but also a little underwhelming compared to what I was expecting. I always kind of hate watching trailers or in any way learning information about the episodes going forward, because I always feel underwhelmed afterwards, because I tend to hype myself up that this is going to be flipping amazing, and then ultimately, if there's only one little thing wrong with the episode, it kind of ruins my enjoyment of it. But honestly, that might also just be because The Walking Dead in general is a show that is better binged. For one reason or another, it just is more enjoyable when binged. And that could certainly be true for season 11. Although there's definitely some seasons of The Walking Dead that are much more enjoyable when watched week to week. Because season 9, which was the first season after the pit that was season 7 and 8, was actually really fun to watch week to week. There was excitement and fun developments in every single episode, and I've never felt bored or like I wasn't interested in checking out the next episode. But I did feel like that for season 10. And I'm honestly kind of feeling like that as well for this episode. Because, like, certainly there were things that I enjoyed and that excited me. But the thing that did that were honestly not the things that should have, for a lack of a better way to say it, honestly. And I'm gonna get into what I'm talking about exactly once we get to that specific thing that I really enjoyed. But yeah. Okay, so I guess let's just start off with a recap of the episode, and I'm gonna get into everything a little by little. So we have actually a pretty cool cold open, probably the best cold open that The Walking Dead has ever done, and I don't really think I haven't really thought about how many cold opens The Walking Dead has had before, but I do really like this one because it's a really well executed scene of our main characters having a plan on getting into a place, getting the supplies, and getting out without getting into trouble. Obviously, this is The Walking Dead, so they do get into trouble, but the fact that they show them uh, having a plan and having steps to that plan and what they're going to do to get the stuff that they want to get, it kind of shows our characters as smart people who actually plan stuff and don't just go in guns a-blazing or just without a plan. It definitely makes our characters smarter, so I kind of don't agree with some of the criticisms some people have pointed out about that opening sequence, because in the opening sequence you have the female characters of the group getting inside the military base, which is full with walkers, because they're trying to get some military food from there because they don't have any supplies left, because the big herd that Alpha had apparently has scared off all the animals. And it makes sense why they would send only the female characters down and not Daryl or Alden or Jerry or anybody else, because I think those are the only characters from the male characters that were there. It makes sense why they would send the females, because they're lighter, and because ultimately it's because they're lighter. So again, that shows the smartness of our main characters. But some people criticize why don't they just kill all the walkers and then get also the ammo and just search through the whole place in the safety of no walkers. And like, I can certainly understand where that sentiment and that question comes from, but honestly, if you think about it for a little more than a second, you have pretty much the explanation in that scene itself. Because in one sub-scene in that whole sequence, we see Kelly and Magna killing two walkers that are close to each other. And as we see in that whole scene, there's a bunch of walkers lying on the ground, kind of sleeping, for lack of a better term. For those of you who don't know what these walkers are, they are lurkers. I think that's the canon way of what they're called. I don't know if the show has ever called them that, but we have that name from, at least in the Telltale games, they are featured at times. Certain walkers who, for the most part, are silent and are just lying around and not doing anything until somebody comes by. They're just typical walkers. It's just after a while they kind of lose stimulation, so they don't do anything. And as you can see in this episode, the little bit of stimulation can make them move. So as we see in that scene that Kelly and Magna kill the walkers, the motion, the act of killing the walkers themselves wakes them up. So if all the characters, even if you have all the characters, including Daryl, Jerry, and Alden, getting down and killing all the walkers, you just cannot possibly kill all the walkers at the same time. So ultimately, they will, one way or another, have to deal with a herd of walkers that they'll have to kill. So again, you can make the argument of they're badass zombie killers. They can deal with them. But first of all, they don't know how many walkers there are actually in that whole base. So it's stupid to just go guns a-blazing and killing them. And it's not necessarily something that it's worth spending energy on. They were able to get in and get the supplies. What more do they need? They don't necessarily need guns because they don't really use them, and they don't have the means of replenishing their ammo. So it's ultimately gonna be kind of pointless to get those guns, even though it's it can also be justified to go and get them at some point in the future. But in this specific mission, it doesn't make sense to go and get them. They went there for food and supplies, not for guns. And yeah, ultimately they do end up fighting the walkers, but from what I saw in the episode, they actually managed to get what they went there for, so I don't know what people are really complaining about. And honestly, also the way the walkers ended up waking up was actually a very smart way of going about it, because in some other seasons I feel like they would have had some idiot character end up waking them up accidentally or something. But I like how the reason why the walkers wake up is because Dario accidentally cuts himself, and a drop of blood ends up falling on one of them, waking it up, and thus that one waking the other ones up. That's actually a very smart way of showing that shit happens. It's not necessarily like, even if you plan, shit is going to happen. Accidents are going to happen. I really like that. And ultimately, that sequence is just really fucking good. It shows the strengths of a character and their smartness, which is something that people have complained that their main characters don't show how smart they are. And because, like, in a real zombie apocalypse, I would have dug a moat around my base. Well, maybe you would have, but eventually that moat is going to fill up. Your people's plans about surviving the zombie apocalypse are not necessarily the smartest thing ever. I've honestly always disagreed with those criticisms about how the characters should do more to protect themselves from walkers. You really wouldn't. It's a worth it versus risk kind of thing. Sure, you could dig a moat, but it's gonna take a long time. It's gonna eventually fill up if you don't remove the walkers, and it's probably gonna be a pain in the ass to remove the walkers. And it's also kind of going to weaken the wall ultimately if you dig the moat too close to the wall. So it kind of feels pointless for many reasons. Like, there's so many reasons why you can justify not doing something like that people claim to be smart. So yeah, after that scene we have a scene at Alexandria, which I feel like it's kind of implied as a joke, because I think some of the characters say that this food should keep us going for a while, and then it cuts to Gabriel saying that it's only gonna be enough for 1 week, which is kind of weird. It kind of creates a little bit of a weird tone to have this kind of a thing as a joke, but it's not really a big deal. It's just a little weird little moment there. And in one of the scenes around that scene, we are introduced of some other characters from Maggie's group. I don't remember all of their names. I do remember how all they look like, though, which is why I kind of like them, because they feel much more distinct and interesting and fully realized as survivors compared to Cole and Elijah. I still like Cole and Elijah, but I like these three new characters much more. I only remember 2 names of those characters. Duncan, who is the big muscular black guy, and the other, I think it's the name of the other black guy, it's Frost, but I'm not exactly sure. But yeah, they're actually pretty cool looking characters. I don't know whether they're going to be glorified red shirts going forward, or whether they're actually going to have some characters similarly to Magna's group. That's definitely going to be the preferred way to go about it. But regardless, I like them. I think they're good additions to the team. So hopefully they're going to get their characters developed a little more before getting killed, because they're inevitably going to get killed. Because it's the final season of the show. You gotta kill a lot of characters. You just have to. But I don't really know which ones you can kill. Because when you think about it, a lot of the characters can't really die. And if you want to get some examples about why, for example, Aaron can't die, in my opinion, because then you would leave Gracie an orphan. and it just doesn't make sense for me. I feel like you have to keep at least one family member alive, at least one parent, which is why I feel like somebody like Rosita or Gabriel could die. Um, I'm leaning more towards Gabriel because some of the storylines set up with him I feel like could lead to him dying, but I kind of feel like he would end up dying for nothing because ultimately Coco, which is Rosita's kid, is not his. It's not his biological kid, so it doesn't feel like the character leaves anything behind in a way. So yeah, there's a lot of characters like that because they have kids, I feel like they can't die. Auden as well. A lot of people have speculated that Auden's gonna die this season, but he has a kid to take care of. I don't really see him dying. Maybe he will die, but I don't really see it. It doesn't really make sense to me for him to die, but I don't know. So yeah, after they find out that the food that they got from the military base is apparently not enough to keep them going, Maggie hatches a plan for them to go and reclaim her community from the Reapers. Their community is called the Meridian, which is the name I'm going to be using going forward for simplicity's sake, as well because that's what it's called. But the thing that bothers me about it is how quickly they're ready to jump into another conflict. Like, have our main characters not learned anything, especially somebody like Daryl? Because literally in the first episode of season 10, he says to Carol that sometimes he feels like they just survive from one fight to the next. You literally just defeated the Whisperers. Why are you so adamant to jump into another conflict with a group that you don't know anything about or very little about, on the only things being that they're very threatening and they're ready to kill themselves to kill you? Why would you risk that? Like, I understand you don't have food, but why don't you just go and find a new territory, new place, build a new community somewhere else? Because clearly Alexandria is destroyed completely, Hilltop is destroyed completely, the kingdom is destroyed completely. Maybe go to Oceanside, I guess. That one might be still standing, but yeah, I don't know. Honestly, why don't they just go to Oceanside now that I think about it? Why is everybody back at Alexandria? Because everybody, including Oceanside, I think was at the tower. At least I was under the impression that they were. That was in the season finale, or at least what was supposed to be the season finale, episode 16. But maybe they were not, and maybe the Oceanside survived. The community itself, I'm talking about. But yeah, it just doesn't make sense. It's not worth to stay in this location. Like, I can understand for certain reasons, like your loved ones having died there and being buried there, or maybe because certain characters like Michonne or Rick, not knowing where you're going to end up, so you kind of owe it to them to stay in Alexandria. But yeah, I don't know. It just feels stupid to just go into a fight when I feel like you have much safer options out there, you know? And especially, again, Daryl being so adamant to go into another fight. Because, like, what they're doing with deciding to go and reclaim the Meridian from the Reapers, it's exactly what they did when Negan showed up, which I guess it's kind of like a nice parallel that this episode is doing because of the things this episode is ultimately about, which is whether Negan gets to be redeemed and whether he deserves to live and whether he has the right to walk free and share his peace to others after what he did in season 6. It's a nice parallel, but it doesn't make it even less stupid. So yeah, they ultimately decide that they're going to go and fight the Reapers and reclaim the Meridian. So they go on a walk to the Meridian, I guess, but during the travel they end up in a rainstorm, so they have to haul up in a metro station, which is honestly a really cool set piece. As I said in other reviews, I think I said said it a couple of times in my reviews for 10C, how much I like, one of the things that I like about Angela Kang as a showrunner is that she really tries to do things that haven't been done before on the show, like, for example, having them go to the museum in the season 9 premiere, the snow episode, which is one of my favorite episodes of Walking Dead. I wish we get another one like that, honestly. It was such a cool episode and such a different from anything we've ever gotten before. And getting our characters into an metro line is just another really cool set piece. And I honestly think so far they've used it to its full extent. But I don't know, as cool as an idea it is, it ultimately still, the episode still feels incomplete for some reason. I don't know why. That's honestly the ultimate reason why I'm kinda not really the biggest fan of this episode. It's because it feels kinda incomplete. And that was true for a lot of the episodes in 10C, which is why I feel like Season 11 might actually have more in common with 10C than we would have liked, but yeah, I don't know. So yeah, they end up going into the metro line, and this is honestly where the best part of the episode starts for me, because it starts, I guess, a little bit of a mini arc for Negan in this episode. And I gotta say, Negan is right now my favorite character and the most interesting character to watch, honestly. So once they go into the metro line, because he also went with them, because he is from Virginia, he knows the state, he knows Washington, D.C. He went with them so they can get to the Meridian quicker. Once they go into the metro line, everybody's being a petty asshole to him, honestly. I understand that these people have all reasons to hate Negan, I guess, and maybe Maggie's people, having heard the bad things that he has done, also have a right to hate him. But it feels so fucking petty. Like, come on, do you really have to hit him in the shoulder once you go beside him? Come on. Like, that's so petty. Like, if you hate him so much, why did you bring him? It's ultimately because Maggie is stupid, but still, it's so petty. And then, when Negan tried to talk to Daryl about this, and about how stupid it is for them to go into the metro line when they don't know what they will have to deal with in the metro line, and they can't easily escape it, it really pissed me off how Daryl responded to him. Like, you think we're buddies or something? Like, no. But also kind of yes. Because you were definitely starting to be somewhat friendly to him in last season. Like, when you took Beta down, when Negan asked you, shit, did you know who that was? And you said, yeah, nobody. And then you run right beside him. You hit him slightly on the stomach. It kind of implying like a friendship. Or if not friendship, at least friendly behavior towards him. Or, I don't know, that's the best way I can put it. It just implied that you were starting to be a little bit friendly to each other. Same with the scene in which you took the Whisperers, they took the Whisperers out. I think it was like 10:14 in the darkness, in the rain, where the Whisperers showed up and they tied up Daryl. At the end, once he took out the Whisperers, he was like, untie me, asshole. Like, again, implying kind of like a begrudging friendship, or at least friendliness, and trolling each other. And now all of a sudden, now that Maggie's back, Daryl has become her little bitch and will be doing anything as long as Maggie wants it. Like, I understand why Daryl would want to do that, because he feels guilty for Glenn. It makes sense. That behavior makes sense, but it's also kind of frustrating, and it makes me hate Maggie more, which I don't know whether the writers are intending of that or not, but that's how it ends up. I end up feeling, because Daryl was becoming somewhat friendly to Negan, and now that Maggie's back, because she's back, like, it's not even like Negan has done anything to wrong them again. He's been actually pretty flipping helpful, but no. Now that Maggie's back, everybody has to forget how nice and helpful Negan has been because he traumatized Maggie. And again, I understand why Maggie hates him. It's completely justified from her side. But at the same time, sometimes you gotta put your personal experiences and emotions away for the sake of rational behavior. And Maggie doesn't do that in this episode. So I'm really happy when in the later scenes, Negan calls her out on it. And it's honestly the best interaction they've had so far. And my favorite moment of the episode, I've literally rewatched that scene so many times. That whole scene where Negan ends up saving Gage, who... Why the fuck is he even there? May I question also? Because everybody else is an adult or a badass. Why the fuck is Gage there? Why would he go to fight an enemy that is clearly way above anything he could possibly deal with? Also, he's a teenager. Like, it just doesn't make sense why he would be there. I feel like he was there just so Negan could save a kid. Which, I mean, I can kind of overlook that, but when you realize that that's the only reason why he was there, it starts to fall apart a little bit, but still. I do like how in the scene, he quickly, without even thinking, runs and saves him from the walker, and then everybody looks at him as if he's just murdered somebody. And then they have the audacity, Daryl has the audacity to say that Negan doesn't give a shit about that kid. That may be so, but that doesn't make Negan's points that he makes any less true or less relevant, because you guys don't really care. The guys didn't really care about Gage either, because if they did, they would have run and helped him. But they did not, because they all want Negan to die. But yeah, that whole speech or monologue that Negan does it's so good. It's honestly one of my favorite, if not my favorite dialogue from Negan ever. It's just so good and so memorable. And just the snarkiness of it is so good. Like how he says, anything in particular we need to pay attention to, Maggie? It's just so flipping good. Like, dialogue-wise at least, this episode is honestly really good on the dialogue side of things. It's just that on some of the execution of scenes, it's where it's wonky. Which is, I guess, something that I hadn't considered before, because right now that I think about it, about how much I actually enjoyed the dialogue, I'm actually starting to be a little bit more positive on the episode, because I didn't really like it when I first watched it, which might have been because of a personal experience that I went through that same day. I was in a very bad mood when I sat down and watched the episode. But I didn't really enjoy it. But now that I think about it, there was actually a lot that I enjoyed. It's just that the overall experience was kind of underwhelming. So, yeah, you know what? Maybe it's not that bad of an episode. But yeah, ultimately the best part for me was the dialogue, especially in the Negan and Maggie scenes. Like, that whole back and forth with all the lines, or it wasn't even really that much of a back and forth, it's just Negan saying zinger after zinger. It was just so good. Like, him calling out Maggie about paying attention, then calling out Alden for wanting to put a gag in his mouth by saying, well, why don't you get up on your tippy toes and try? Like, these lines are so flipping good. It's one of those moments that really reminds me why Negan is so fun character to watch. I love him. He's my favorite character right now on the show, honestly. And yeah, so then Daryl says that Negan doesn't give a shit about the kid, and then I love how Negan just calls them out again, or at least calls out Maggie, that she doesn't give a shit about a kid. Which is true. Nobody seems to have given a shit about the kid. And you can argue whether Negan truly cares about Gage, but he at least did something. He saved him. He risked his life for him. And that also even applies to the fans watching the episode. You can criticize about why Negan did it. What are his true motives? Whether it's because he wants to be accepted as a member of the group, or he's doing it just to atone, or whatever. It doesn't matter. Your motives doesn't matter. They don't matter. It matters what you do. And what he did was save Gage's life. Something that nobody else tried to do. Or at least not as quickly as he did. So maybe question your motives. If somebody who apparently is not a good guy has quicker reaction time than you. Although that interaction that Negan has with everybody there ends up in a little bit of a confusing way at first, because he says that he's not gonna let Maggie drag him to the mud, filth, and slime only to put him down like a dog, like Glenn was. Like, at first you were confused about why would he mention Glenn, because so far everything that he's saying about the whole mission that they're on is true. Maggie is not focused on what's at hand. She is too focused on trying to get Negan killed. And not really giving a shit about whether people are going to die. But then Negan says Glenn's name for what reason exactly? Ultimately, I think it's because he is kind of trying to test where Maggie stands, whether she is going to kill him or not, how much harder he has to push her for him to kill her, for her to kill him. And also because, at least personally, I feel like he is tired of the flip-flopping about whether he is going to be accepted as part of the group or whether he's going to get killed. Like, if you're gonna kill him, kill him. Don't act as if he's part of the group only to kill him later. And I think that's what it is, because ultimately that's exactly the point he made, that he's not gonna allow Maggie to drag him through the mud, filth and slime, only to put him down in a way that he doesn't want to be put down. But yeah, it was a pretty good interaction, although Negan deservedly gets punched in the face by Darrow. Although I do like that little tiny interaction where Negan talks to him, saying that at first he thought that Darrow was in on it, on what Maggie was doing with Negan, where he was trying to get him killed in some way, but then he says that through the look on Darrow's eyes, he knows that he wasn't in on it, that nobody in the group was. But yeah, even Maggie's group points out how unnecessary Negan is to this mission, because nobody else can read a map. Why would you need Negan to show you where to go? You've been living around these places for 10 fucking years at this point. You should know the place at this point. And you can't look at a map. But no, ultimately, Maggie claims that they're going through the tunnels because on the ground is death, even though it's not. It's a storm, and that they're trying to go as fast as possible because their kids are starving, even though they're currently not. They still have a fucking week to do it. And maybe if they weren't going on a killing spree, they could have found some supplies already and returned. But no, they have to go and fight another group. But yeah, that is ultimately the best part of the episode for me. It's the highlight. Again, other scenes are not bad, but that is by far the thing that I will remember this episode for. That whole scene with Negan, that whole monologue, essentially. Because then we also have some of the scenes at the Commonwealth, which I honestly personally don't really understand why the hell are they included in this episode, because you would think if they're going to be doing a two-parter, which is again something that it doesn't really make sense to be done in a show like The Walking Dead, because for the most part one episode flows into the other one in this show, and then that episode flows into the next one. So it doesn't really feel like it needs to have two-parters. You would think that when you have a two-parter, it's genuinely going to be on 2 episodes who are focusing only on one story, essentially like an extended episode or like a movie in crammed into 2 episodes. But no, so far it seems like it's just a typical Walking Dead episode. It's just that it's called a first part of a two-parter, because then we have the Commonwealth scenes, which have pretty much no connection to anything that happens in the A-plot part of the episode. But and personally, I would have rather not have them be part of the episode, but I definitely I know that a lot of people would have been pissy about them not including any information about the Commonwealth in the first episode of the season and dragging it out again, because the Walking Dead fandom is just fucking impatient sometimes, or a lot of the times, or always. But personally, I feel like it was unnecessary, and it kind of ruins the flow of the episode, in my opinion. But yeah, we have those Commonwealth scenes. I liked the first scene in which they get interrogated by the Commonwealth people, and it was kind of funny with some of the invasive questions, which, when you think about it, like, why the fuck would they even ask those questions? Like, what do you wipe with when you go to the toilet? I feel like that question specifically is more there because of comedy than anything else. So it kind of rubs me the wrong way that it's there, but I think it worked as a comedy for the most part, although the funniest part of that whole interaction was definitely Eugene. For once, I actually felt like he was a good comic relief, because in that whole scene you have Yumiko, Princess, and Ezekiel reacting like how anybody would react about these kind of stupid questions that you shouldn't be expected to really know the answer for 10 years into the zombie apocalypse, but apparently Eugene knows everything about those things. It was pretty funny. But the more important part of that whole interaction and that interrogation was actually the subtle foreshadowing about the Commonwealth's true purpose in the story and what it's going to be about. And by the way, spoiler alert, if you don't want to know anything about it, ultimately the story of the Commonwealth is about a class system. The Commonwealth has a class system where what you were doing before the zombie apocalypse fell is what you're going to be doing if you live at the Commonwealth. And it's what the group in the comics ends up fighting against in the Commonwealth. So it's kind of interesting. I really like the kind of subtle foreshadowing with the questions about what Eugene was doing before the zombie apocalypse happened, what Ezekiel was doing, and what Yumiko was doing, and certainly how when they were asking Yumiko about what she was doing, she answers obviously that she's a lawyer and where she studied. And when Ezekiel answers what he was doing, when saying that he ended up dropping out of college, they kind of cut him off. It's kind of subtly showing you exactly what the Commonwealth is going to be about. The class system that is going to be very stringent and very powerful. I also really like the interaction between Ezekiel and Mercer. I honestly expected a little bit more from Mercer. I expected him to be a little bit more impactful because the actor is really good. He looks really good. He really fits the character from the comics. It's like he's put out straight out of the comic book. But he didn't really get to do much in this episode. He wasn't able to show much of a personality or much of badassery, honestly. He just looks cool, and that's pretty much it. But the little interaction that they did get was actually really cool. I like how, again, how ridiculous the outfits of the Commonwealth soldiers was called out by a character on the show last time that the Commonwealth soldiers were featured in the episode, which was in the Princess episode. She also called them out about looking like space suits. So that was really cool. But I also really liked how Ezekiel called him out on the fascistic behavior by the Commonwealth, because they've been cooperating and answering all the questions, and yet they treat them like trash. And I love how Ezekiel says that Mercer was a power-tripping cop. I don't really know the backstory for Mercer, although I think I was a little bit spoiled about it earlier today when reading things on the Walking Dead subreddit. But I don't exactly know whether he was a cop or not. I think he was in the Marines or something. But yeah, I don't know. It was still an interesting interaction there. I think it was one of the following scenes. We see the group after the interrogation in a little bit of like a caged area, similar to what we have in Fear the Walking Dead Season 1. It's actually very reminiscent of that, so I like that nice callback to it. And there was a little bit of a subtle horror-like moment when Princess was asking a couple in a nearby cage, for lack of a better term, about how long they have been in this place, because people get processed and interrogated and decided on whether they're gonna get let in uh, or whatever. And the the guy says that they've been there only for months, but the the woman says that they've been there 9 months. So that's a subtle way of showing you that when you go through the reprocessing, I guess it's kind of like a brainwashing thing where they kind of try to break you down. Why exactly? I don't know. I don't know why they just wouldn't kill them or throw them out. At least for throwing them out, I can understand, because who knows, maybe they will come back or attack the Commonwealth. But at least, I don't know why they just don't kill them. And maybe they do. Maybe you're gonna find out more about how they get killed at some point in the future, but right now we don't really know. So that was a little nice subtle horror moment. And I love how in the following scene we see somebody get dragged to reprocessing, and how in the previous scene Eugene was saying how they should stay in this place because now they have the possibility of meeting Stephanie and building connection with this community, who are just being a little bit tough on us because they don't know us, they don't know who we are and whether we're good people or bad people. And how in the following scene, after learning that reprocessing is bad, he's just like, okay, we gotta go. It was actually a really fun moment, and probably the funniest moment in the episode for me, outside of the Negan stuff that he said, because a lot of those things that Negan said in the episode were really good zingers. Some of the best lines he's ever had, honestly. But here are where the praises for that sequence in the Commonwealth with the Commonwealth soldiers kind of ends, because afterwards we have some really bad writing coming, because in one of the following scenes, when they're planning about how they're going to escape and what they're going to do to escape, Princess is off on her own in her own world and looking at some of the Commonwealth soldiers, when she starts talking about how two of the soldiers are apparently in love with each other. And outside of anything else, I like how that scene shows more of Princess's character, how she is able to read subtle hints about people, and how she sees things differently from most people, I guess, and how she has a very strong imagination as well. But if we ignore that side of things, it is very clunky how they tell us, oh, these two people are in love with each other, and every hour or so they go and have sex, and it takes this amount of time to take off their uniforms, which is how they end up escaping from the cage. It's kind of very clunky. It feels like they were like, okay, we need to have some kind of an explanation about how our characters can possibly get to these uniforms. Okay, I know we're gonna have our one of our characters explain this to the other ones. It was still done better than just straight up expositioning, but it was still very much an exposition. And it especially hurts how bad they did it, because in the following scene, they still have our characters just randomly in the outfits, not showing us how they escaped the cage, not showing us how they got the uniforms, not showing us how they got it onto them, and how they got the rest of the gang outside. How do you just skip over that? It's such important information. Why did you just skip over that? I feel like, especially considering with what happens afterwards, where they go to the Wall of the Lost with all these pictures of people who are looking for their lost loved ones, and Princess randomly sees a picture with Yumiko on it, and apparently her sister looking for her, and Yumiko decides to stay because of that. It feels like the writers were like, okay, so we're gonna have these characters stay here anyway, but we also have to get them in some way to the Wall of the Lost. So it doesn't really matter how they get out of the cage. You can just overlook that, or just write something, come up with something. It feels like that was kind of like part of the pitch meeting. So they kind of overlooked it. When I feel like you could have come up with some other ways about how they would have seen the Wall of the Lost. You could have had one of the of our group having to go through reprocessing, or maybe all of them having to go through reprocessing, and as they were being taken there, they go past the wall and they notice that. I feel like that would have actually felt more earned than just having Princess notice it. Especially because once they are walking, once Yumiko and Eugene, dressed in the Commonwealth uniforms, are leading Ezekiel and Princess through the hallway, one other soldier stops them and asks them where they're going. They say that they're leading them through reprocessing. You could have literally just had the character being taken to reprocessing. Might as well have done that instead of having this clunky way of having them escape and not really explain how the fuck they escaped, really. Yeah, that's honestly the only glaringly bad part of the episode, and I agree with every single criticism about it. It just doesn't make any sense, and it's, dare I say, episode breaking for me, because it's such a blatant plot hole. Like, there have been some bad moments in other episodes, but I feel like even Fear the Walking Dead hasn't had these kind of plot holes. Although I haven't watched enough of the worst seasons of Fear the Walking Dead, so I can't really say whether they've had these bad of plot holes, but honestly don't really expect these kind of plot holes from the main show, so it hurts really bad that they've overlooked such a plot hole. And maybe they're gonna explain it in some way in episode 2, but I very much doubt it. So yeah, I guess they're staying at the Commonwealth. Again, I feel like they probably should have left the Commonwealth stuff, especially because we're also gonna get more of the Commonwealth stuff in episode 2 of the two-parter. You could have just left that be the third episode. I would have been fine with that. People might have whined about not getting to see more about the Commonwealth in the first episode, but I feel like that would have ended up for the better of this two-parter, because it would have made it feel better, or better written, and more like a good episode, you know? But yeah, I think afterwards we have the scene in the metro line where our gang ends up surrounded by walkers, and the only way for them to escape is to climb inside a train. Well, specifically on top of the train, because on the sides, apparently the walls of the tunnel have fallen apart, so they only can climb on top and get inside afterwards. And one by one they climb up and get inside, but guess who are the two last? Negan and fucking Maggie. And obviously Negan climbs up, but as Maggie is climbing up, she gets grabbed by walkers, and she screams for Negan to help her, but dun dun dun, Negan doesn't help her. He just goes away. And that's the cliffhanger of the episode, and I feel like they really tried to justify that two-parter with, that two-parter idea with this stupid cliffhanger. Because it's clearly one complete story that is dragged over into 2 episodes. I feel like there isn't even, like, enough story in this episode alone. I feel like they could... I'm still gonna wait and see, but I feel like they probably could have just gotten the story of the two-parter and just made it 1 episode. And everybody would have loved it. We don't really need the dragging out of storylines in the final season. It's 24 episodes. You want to tell a story with this new group of people called the Reapers, and you still have to tell a huge ass story with the Commonwealth. Like, you don't really have the time, goddammit. Why would you waste an episode like this? But we still have to wait and see, so I don't want to be too judgy about it, but anyway. Also, for some reason, we have Dog deciding to run under the train and Daryl having to follow him. I'm really curious about the decision of separating our group like this. I really don't understand why they need Daryl to be separated from the group. Maybe it's because he's gonna meet the Reapers alone or meet Leah or something. I don't know, but right now I'm just really confused. It's hard for me to really judge how I feel about this episode without seeing the second part, because this very much is a first part of a second part. It feels like it, because I don't really feel satisfied with the story. I don't really feel like it's complete, so I can't really judge whether I like it or not. So I'm actually not gonna give a rating to this episode right now. I'm gonna wait to see the second part, and then I'm gonna rate it in that video. But right now I'm still very conflicted about this episode. I like the, for lack of a better term, I like the floor plans for the episode, but I don't really like what they build on top of the floor plans. And yeah, honestly, I feel like that's where I'm gonna end my review of the episode. On paper, it's good, but the execution is less than stellar. And again, maybe the second episode is gonna be really amazing and it's gonna change my opinion on this first one, but yeah, I don't know. Ultimately, there's only one really, really bad part of the episode, and that's the stupid Commonwealth plot hole, but I feel like I can, for the most part, overlook that, but it is very annoying that it's there. But yeah, I'm really curious to hear what you guys think about this episode, because I've really struggled to even put my thoughts into a comprehensible review in this video. I've tried to record this video like 3 or 4 times, and I'm still not sure whether I really made a good video out of it, but I am really curious to see what you guys think about this episode, and maybe you're gonna change my opinion on it. Who knows? But yeah, that's how I personally feel about this one. I'm a little disappointed, but it's just the first episode. The Walking Dead has never really been great with its premieres. For the most part, the premieres are always misses. The only ones that were kind of hits were the Season 5 premiere, the Season 7 premiere, and the Season 3 premiere. The rest of them are kinda not as good as the best episodes of the seasons, you know? But yeah, before we end this video, I want to give a huge thanks to my first ever Patreon on Patreon, Omari Bridgman. And also to my second ever Patreon on Patreon, White Shadow Wolfie. If you want to join them and support the channel and support me, and allow me to continue doing these kind of videos and maybe do them even more frequently, you can do that by going to the links in the description down below and going to my Patreon. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please leave a like, subscribe. Also, check out the links in the description to my Twitter if you want to follow me over there, and to my Wattpad where I post my stories, because in addition to doing all these videos on my channel, I'm also a writer. And if you enjoy my stories, or you simply enjoy my videos, you can head over to Patreon where you can pledge your support and help get the channel going, help support me so I can keep writing the stories you enjoy. And additionally, you're not only going to be supporting me for my stories or for my YouTube videos, but also because I am trans. For those of you who don't know, yes, I am. For simplicity's sake, I refer to myself as non-binary, although sometimes it kind of fluctuates, but I still want to somewhat transition, so I would really appreciate any support that you can give me. But again, if you don't want to support me monetarily, that's completely fine. You can still help me out in other ways that are completely free, like liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and especially sharing this video with somebody who you think might enjoy it. And I think it's pretty much it for this video, so hopefully I'm gonna see you in the next one. Bye!